A poem for Father Robert Goedecke on his 80th birthday, November 2022. 80 godsend leagues under the sea. Of life, the deep-spirited adventures of a man and man of the cloth, still in motion, clear devotion, through known and nameless waters and currents, passages and moments of growing, being, becoming, of discovering the hydrosphere of the heart, hidden grottos of the mind, a world of beauty and mystery below the surface of the everyday, whose leagues of voyaging have led him to many homes and sea-floored friendships, joys, and soul-filled worships, and to today, this waving day, and wherever the tides of life may bring him tomorrow. Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in to show 136 in my ongoing weekly series, coming to you live from the terra, cognita, and incognita of the Rhode Island coast. This is your poet and poetorialist Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more fully, more alively, more poetically. In broadcast 135, we looked at the quiet, finding it, creating it, enjoying it, around and inside you, in your days, in nature, and elsewhere. From noiseless havens to places of meditation, experiences from stillness to welcome silence to peaceful pockets of solitude. This week, we're revisiting the unknown, a theme we began exploring in broadcast 82. Here, touching into other dimensions of the uncharted, the unnamed, the unrevealed. Ones inside of, outside of, and sometimes far beyond ourselves, even at or over the edges of our imaginations. Entering parts of our beings, our world, our larger wonderings, yet to be perceived, discovered, understood. And how we live and dance, can live and dance with these unknowns and unknowables. Well, let's venture for a while together through the further cultural commentary, poetry, and inquiry I've gathered for us on the unknown, and see what speaks strongly or subtly to us, to you. Let's begin with a poem by Francine Sterle, Sterle. How much of the map? How much of the map could be labeled terra incognita? How much unknown, invisible to others? How much of myself could I shake off, abandon those undiscovered places I barely know exist? Though the map is not the territory, how I am drawn to leave behind the pattern for the path for a minute, an hour, for one whole day. I'd be like a wind-two describing the body using cardinal directions. He touches me on the west arm. The river is to the east. When we return, his east arm circles around me, and the river stays to the west. Without that landscape to connect to, who am I? Apart from what surrounds me, at the edge of the unknown, dirt unceasingly does my thinking, in bonam malem partem, until it is a smooth stone in my mouth. Venturing forward, doubling back, what I see depends on where I am. If there be death, if the dark night of the soul, oh, I know what is waiting. Every threshold is sacred, the eternal allure of what comes next. Thank you, Francine Sterle, for that. That's from her collection, what thread? Carrie Fountain's piece, 4 months old. All the baby knows is the flop of her limbs and the milky blue vein of sleep and the parking lot of her animal fear. The cars left there overnight, windshields dark and thick with dew. The rest is completely unknown. The complete darkness of her white room, where she sleeps on a clean sheet printed with baby crocodiles and lions wearing diapers. Thank you, Carrie Fountain. That's from her collection, Instant Winner, 4 months old. Matthew Brennan, Nights Our House Comes to Life. Some nights in midwinter, when the creek clogs with ice and the spines of fir trees stiffen under a blank frozen sky, on these nights our house comes to life. It happens when you're half asleep, a sudden crack, a fractured dream, you bolting upright. But all you can hear is the clock your great-grandfather found in 1860 and smuggled here from Dublin for his future bride. A being as unknown to him then as she is now to you. A being as distant as the strangers who built this house and died in this room some cold, still night like tonight, when all that was heard were the rhythmic clicks of a pendulum and something barely audible moving on the dark landing of the attic stairs. Thank you, Matthew Brennan, from his collection, The House with the Mansard Roof. The electric bed. You turn it on by unplugging yourself, by going dark into sleep, by connecting to the grid of your dreaming world where everything is electric, is wildly charged, flows with fast and slow current, with high and low voltage, positives and negatives, generates heat and light of curious and compelling kinds, conducts your subconscious through flashing scenes, encounters, mysteries, marvels, activates deep and secret circuits of intuition, precognition, sends signals, powerful signals, through the wires to your waking life. From psychologytoday.com, Living with the Unknown, How to Deal with Uncertainty and Surprise, by Olivia Ames Hoplitzel. I've been around for a long time, said my 84-year-old friend, but there's something about these days that's harder than I ever remember. The climate emergency, political situation, racial divisions, violence. It's like always living on the edge of a precipice. My friend's words reverberated. I remembered a quote from Socrates. Quote, "These are surely the hardest of times." These are feelings humankind has shared across the centuries. We keep being ambushed by the unexpected, a medical diagnosis, upsetting news, accidents, failed projects, the death of a friend, or whatever. The question is how we respond to life's hard knocks and learn to accept that we live in the great unknown. In working with these challenges, it helps to acknowledge that we are always living with the unknown, that the unknown is actually the very foundation of life. We may long for security and certainty, but these are illusions that add a subtle kind of suffering. Suffering always arises in the gap between the reality of what's happening and whatever judgments we have about it. From gregweens.com, WIENS. Living with the unknown. How comfortable are you living with the unknown? I think there's an element in all of us that simply wants to understand our world to the exclusion of mystery. It would seem few people have pursued this kind of knowledge more than I. Obviously, my degrees in engineering, business, theology, statistics, and psychology reveal my attempts to do so. Yet the more I've learned, the more I realize I don't know. This is not just a colloquial phrase, but it's something I've come to grasp deeply in my soul. There's so much in the world that we simply will never know. The sad thing for me is that so few people live in awe of their world. This all comes from fully appreciating that we do not fully understand ourselves, others, or the world around us. Unfortunately, too many people live their lives in such a small sphere because they think they know all the answers to life. So it isn't the quality of what I am doing, but it is the pace at which I am doing them that causes me to lose touch with this wonder and awe in others. When I am in this mode, others become appointments to make, people to meet, talk with, solve problems, check them off, and move on. At these times, I miss the created wonder of these individuals, as well as the intrigue in the world around me. I miss the unexpected shades in the color of a leaf, the shape of a bug, the crack in the sidewalk beneath my feet, or even my own consciousness to apprehend the grandeur of these. From personaldao.com, facing the unknown. In this practice, even after decades, even after a full lifetime, even after going further than what most people would think is the finishing line, you will continually still go deeper and embrace more of the mystery of your own life. When facing the unknown, it really comes down to a choice in how to hold your story in the end. Being human is all about how you hold or fold your stories, or even more gracefully at times releasing the stories all together, to let the unknown merely be unknown and then to be free. And of course, there's the fear of the unknown that some of us have or have had or may have. One of mine here about that, for all those who have experienced it sometime, especially in a quaking way. This is called, Have You Had Your Dark Nights? Of the soul. Cave dark, bat dark nights. Times and places of raw and nameless, sometimes name-plated fear, sheer cliff-faced anxiety, fear of falling into an abyss, into a maw, swallowed whole into the belly of a fierce, unknown beast. And despite each starless passage, each imagined stroke of fate, miscarriage of your fortunes, somehow, however barely, unforeseeably making it through to the light and the heart of day, limbs intact onto solid ground, to the forgotten safety of faith in self and the never vanished bounty shining away inside and all around you. We have the ever awestruck Carl Sagan, or some say Sagan. I'll say Sagan. Here he is on how to live with the unknown. We are bathing in mystery and confusion. That will always be our destiny. The universe will always be much richer than our ability to understand it. So, what do we do in the midst of all that? We can open ourselves, our inner eyes, other inner senses, to see, to apprehend aspects of the mysterious, even if we can't apprehend them all. This is seeing into the mystery, the tapestry of wonders and answers lying unseen by others, below the surface of life, behind the accepted realms of assumed reality. Silence, stillness, and supreme awareness are the way into this world where vast wisdoms reside. Let me ask you some questions about the unknown and about your unknowns. Does the unknown intrigue or excite you? Or does it worry or frighten you? What's the biggest unknown you're facing or contemplating right now? The most challenging. What's the most uncharted, unexplored part of your inner self? And do you want to explore it? Have you made any recent significant discoveries about yourself? How did you get there? what has happened since as a result or is happening? Are there unsung heroes of any kind you know or have met in your life or your travels? Who are they? Why are they heroic to you? Is there a great unknown in the wider world right now that you're burning to have revealed? If so, what is it? Have you made peace with all the things you may never find out the secret of? What about someone who is or was an enigma to you? How much have you let others come to know you deeply, soul to soul? Do you, like many, wonder about the great beyond? About what exists beyond your living, this human life, that you may enter into, eternally or otherwise? Well, I, like you, do wonder now and then about all the unknowns, both inside and around me. I'm fascinated by them, and I wouldn't say baffled, fascinated. And instead of getting over anxious or over eager, I've since decided they will become known to me if and when needed. And if so, whenever the cosmic or soul time is right. And if not, then to trust they just need to remain a mystery. So I have a mantra among others each day, and it's this: when I stay in the present, my future takes care of itself. So I do my level best to stay in the moment. It's a practice, the now, in the now, and let go of the rest. Maybe there's something you do that works for the unknowns in yourself, in your life, in your world. Besides, everything after all, beyond right now, is unknown. Isn't it, my friends? Rebecca Solnit has this quote: "Leave the door open to the unknown, the door into the dark. That's where the most important things come from, where you yourself came from, and where you will go." The philosopher John C. Lilly: "Freedom is in the unknown. If you believe there is an unknown everywhere, in your own body, in your relationships with other people, in political institutions, in the universe, then you have maximum freedom." Poem from Kitchell Pond in the Lewontica Brook Reservation, Convent Station, New Jersey, back in 2016. The edge of everywhere, where we all really live, each waking and dreaming hour. Though few see or feel the edginess, the tenuousness, and the expansiveness, the possibility of a last breath between life and death, or some profound encounter with wonder, where everywhere is every here, for the asking, experiencing. No need to look further than the ground you stand on, the boundless lifescape you're already sensing, venturing, adventuring through. The edge of everywhere. Do you feel this, dear listeners? Could you? Richard Powers has a novel, Bewilderment. Maybe you know it or not. It's about living with bewilderment. And I just wanted to pull out one line from it. So it was very good, very fitting for us. They share a lot, astronomy and childhood. Both are voyages across huge distances. Both search for facts beyond their grasp. Both theorize wildly and let possibilities multiply without limits. Both are humbled every few weeks. Both operate out of ignorance. Both are mystified by time. Both are forever starting out. So speaking of starting out into the unknown, are you a pioneer of any kind, venturing with confidence and curiosity into your unknowns? Or would you like to be? Pioneer. You who braves crossing to a new frontier through all the unknowns and unknowables. You who's ready to risk your life for your dreams. You who believe in a more promising, flourishing place where your heart can run free. You, venturer, pathfinder, hinterlander. You heard a couple of times the reference to terra incognita, which is Latin for unknown land. From Wikipedia, it was used in cartography for regions that had not been mapped or documented, believed to be first seen in Ptolemy's geography, circa the year 150. Well, an urban legend claims that cartographers labeled such regions with "here are dragons," although they did claim, actually, that fantastic beasts, including large serpents, existed in remote corners of the world and depicted such as decoration on their maps. It's now used metaphorically to describe any unexplored subject or field of research. And alongside that we have, as far as I'm concerned, the mysterium tremendum et fascinans. On the more mystical versus mythical side, we have it. And in the study of religion, it appears a mystery before which humanity both trembles and is fascinated, is both repelled and attracted. And in Rudolf Otto's interpretation, the feeling of it may at times come sweeping like a gentle tide, pervading the mind with a tranquil mood of deepest worship. It may pass over into a more set and lasting attitude of the soul. Mysterium tremendum et fascinans. Maybe on that wavelength, I have the poem by Alan Lightman, physicist, poet. How about that? Song of Two Worlds. That's the poem from that. I thought you'd enjoy and appreciate it. I certainly did when I came across it for the first time, which was putting the show together the other day, a few days ago, starting to put more of it together. It all begins at the boundary of wakefulness and dream, of known and unknown. Here it is. Awake. What are these quick shots of warmth, fractals of forest that wind through my limbs? Fragrance of olive and salt taste of skin, raz-taz and clackety sound. Figures and shapes slowly wheel past my view, villas and deserts, distorted faces, children, my children. Distant, the pink moons of my feet. What rules do they follow? I think movement. They wondrously move. Moons flutter and shake. I probe the hills and the ruts of my face. Now I grow large, now I grow small, as the waves of sensation break over my shore. There, a gnarled tree I remember, a stone vessel, the curve of a hill. I take up my pen, dry for some years. What should I write? What should I think? I knock on the door of the universe. Here, this small villa, this table, this pen. I ask the universe, what and why? Now weakened, I must remake the world, one grain at a time. I knock on the door of the universe asking, what makes the light of the stars? What makes the heat of my flesh? What makes the tear shape of rain? So much I've lost. I have nothing except a fierce hunger to fathom this world. Naked, I knock on the door, wearing only my questions. Great Newton, you hid in your rooms, outcast like me, careless of meals, stockings untied, drinker of rosewater, olive oil, beeswax. You found the force between planets and sun, pattern of cosmic attraction, heard clearly the music of spheres. You gauged the distance to stars in the vast rooms of space, which were naught to the space of your mind. You struck the door of the universe. What raging night seized you and screamed that the world must be number and rule? This is the world of the ticking of clocks, menses of women and tides of the moon, orbits of planets, the swaying of the pendulum, spin of the earth, cycles of seasons. I knock on the doors of the universe, asking what makes the swirl of ghazali love songs, and the parallel singing of laws, and the choice to live life alone. I surrender my calipers, rules, and clocks, microscopes, diodes, transistors, glass flasks. For how can I measure the stroke of a passion, or dissect a grief with the digits of pi? Thus I stand naked, with nothing except a fierce hunger to fathom this world, to embark on this road, without length, without breadth. Beautiful, just beautiful. Thank you, Alan Lightman. Song of Two World, or Two World. I mentioned unsung heroes that you may have known or met your time so far on the planet. So I went looking around for some interesting unsung heroes who shaped modern life. And in the Marginalian, I came across a number of them. I'm just going to share two of them. They were very interesting. Henrietta Lacks, 1920 to 1951, an African-American mother of five who migrated from the tobacco farms of Virginia to poorest neighborhoods of Baltimore, died at the tragic age of 31 from cervical cancer. She didn't realize she'd be the donor of cells that would create the HeLa, H-E-L-A, immortal cell line, a line that didn't die after a few cell divisions, making possible some of the most seminal discoveries in modern medicine, crucial in everything from the first polio vaccine to cancer and AIDS research. And there's a story about her called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. I actually think we read a poem by her last week. And then there's Poggio Bracciolini, 1380 to 1459, the most important man you've never heard of. This is from Stephen Greenblatt's book, The Swerve. One cold winter night in 1417, the clean-shaven, slender young man pulled a manuscript off a dusty library shelf and could barely believe his eyes. In his hands was a 1,000-year-old text that changed the course of human thought, the last surviving manuscript of On the Nature of Things, a seminal poem by Roman philosopher Lucretius, full of radical ideas about a universe operating without gods, and that matter made up of minuscule particles in perpetual motion, colliding and swerving in ever-changing directions, which in turn fueled the Renaissance and inspired minds as diverse as Shakespeare, Galileo, Thomas Jefferson, Einstein, and Freud. Well, how about that? How about those unsung heroes? Well, a toast to all the unsung heroes through all time and those that exist right now that we just don't know about, and all the ones to come. We need them at work in the world. Okay. The Unknown Soldier by Melvin B. Tolson. I was a Minuteman at Concord Bridge. I was a frigate gunner on Lake Erie. I was a mortarman at Stony Ridge. I fought at San Juan Hill and Chateau Thierry. I braved Corregidor and the Arctic Sea. The index finger brings democracy. These states bred freedom in my bone, old as the New Testament of Plymouth Bay, when the founding fathers laid the cornerstone and ruled the 13 clocks that would not say the hour on the hour. I nerved myself with them under the noose in the hand of the tyrant's whim. I've seen the alien ships of destiny plow the sea mountains between the hemispheres. I've seen the Gulf Stream of our history littered with derelicts of corsair careers. I've heard the watchman cry, the bars, when midnight held the funeral of stars. I saw horizontal states grow vertical, from Plymouth Harbor to the Golden Gate, till wedged against skyscapes, imperial, their glories elbowed the decrees of fate. These states bred freedom in and in my bone. I hymn their virtues and their sins atone. The tares and wheat grow in the same self-field, self-same field. The rose and thorn companion on the bush, the gold and gravel cuddle in the yield, the oil and grit and dirt together gush. The Gordian knot, to be or not to be, snares not the free. My faith prompts the tomorrows, for I know the roots of liberty, tough-fibered, feed on the blood of tyrants and martyrs. The Judas blow tortures the branches till they twist and bleed, and yet no Caesar, vitamined on loot, can liberty uproot. I am the unknown soldier. I open doors to the rights of man. Letters incarnadine. These shrines of freedom are mine as well as yours. These ashes of free men, yours as well as mine. My troubled ghost shall haunt these states, nor cease, till the global war becomes a global peace. How apropos for our times. The unknown soldier Melvin Tolson from Harlem Gallery and other poems. He wrote that in 1999. Anais Nin, the writer, back in 1940, in the 40s, her Diary of Anais Nin, volume 4, about how inviting the unknown helps us know life more richly, which we actually touched on earlier. She said, "It is possible I never learned the names of birds in order to discover the bird of peace, the bird of paradise, the bird of the soul, the bird of desire. It is possible I avoided learning the names of composers and their music, the better to close my eyes and listen to the mystery of all music as an ocean. It may be I have not learned dates in history in order to reach the essence of timelessness. It may be I never learned geography, the better to map my own routes and discover my own lands. The unknown was my compass. The unknown was my encyclopedia. The unnamed was my science and progress." There's a marvelous book by Robert McFarlane I wanted to mention to you. Underland, a deep time journey. Into the underland we have long placed that which we fear and wish to lose, and that which we love and wish to save. And here's a slice. He said, "We know so little of the worlds beneath our feet. Look up on a cloudless night, and you might see the light from a star thousands of trillions of miles away, or pick out the craters left by asteroid strikes on the moon's face. Look down, and your sight stops at topsoil, tarmac, tow. I have rarely felt as far from the human realm as when only 10 yards below it, caught in the shining jaws of a limestone bedding plain first formed on the floor of an ancient sea." He's a wonderful writer, too. I've read some of his other books. Robert McFarlane, MacFarlane. One with the Sun by A.F. Moritz. Child, one with the sun, in trackless fields of yellow grass and thistle, scent of humid, heavy air, and the wing music of bees and flies. Child, slender nakedness to itself unknown, true color of the light dispersed invisibly or glowing around the black hulls of distant thunderheads, around the grasshopper's countenance, solemn, vigilant, and wise. Green apples, poured full of density, of crispness, float unmoved under leaves on the slope. Brown fallen apples nest in secret whorls of grass. The apple tree, alone in so much space. And below in the woods by the water a sweet dead branch cracks lightly in the shadow in the wind. But here is an old track through the grass head high to a child. Who made it? They must have passed and passed by this one tree, by the abandoned tireless car where rabbits peer out, and the circle of black embers, cans, springs, skeletons of furniture. They too passed here many times on their way from the street's end to the oaks that screen the river. There the sun is nesting now. Night rises with pale flutterings of white wings from roots of plants and the black water. Thank you, Albert Moritz, for that. Elegance by Linda Gregg. All that is uncared for, left alone in the stillness. In that pure silence, married to the stillness of nature. A door off its hinges, shade and shadows in an empty room. Leaks for light. Raw where the tin roof rusted through. The rustle of weeds and their different kinds of air in the mornings, year after year. A pecan tree and the house made out of mud bricks. Accurate and unexpected beauty, rattling and singing, if not to the sun, then to nothing and to no one. Thank you, Linda Gregg. Are you familiar with the book The Soul of an Octopus, a surprising exploration into the wonders of consciousness by Cy Montgomery? I had read that much earlier on. I said, maybe there was something in this for us, and there is. She said in there, what is the soul? Some say it is the self, the, quote, I that inhabits the body. Without the soul, the body is like a light bulb with no electricity. But it is more than the engine of life, say others. It is what gives life meaning and purpose. Soul is the fingerprint of God. Others say that the soul is our innermost being, the thing that gives us our senses, our intelligence, our emotions, our desires, our will, our personality, and identity. One calls soul, quote, the indwelling consciousness that watches the mind come and go, that watches the world pass. Perhaps none of these definitions is true. Perhaps all of them are. But I am certain of one thing as I sit in my pew. If I have a soul, and I think I do, an octopus has a soul too. Fascinating book, and you may have seen the film My Octopus Teacher. I don't know if it was based on that, but an amazing film. Illuminating. Walt Whitman, The World Below the Brine. Speaking of the ocean. The world below the brine. Forest at the bottom of the sea, the branches and leaves, sea lettuce, vast lichens, strange flowers and seeds, the thick tangle, openings and pink turf. Different colors, pale gray and green, purple, white, and gold, the play of light through the water. Dumb swimmers there among the rocks, coral, gluten, grass, rushes, and the aliment of the swimmers. Sluggish existences grazing there, suspended or slowly crawling close to the bottom. The sperm whale at the surface blowing air and spray, or disporting with his flukes. The leaden-eyed shark, the walrus, the turtle, the hairy sea leopard, and the stingray. Passions there, wars, pursuits, tribes, sight in those ocean depths, breathing that thick-breathing air as so many do. The change thence to the sight here, and to the subtle air breathed by beings like us who walk this sphere. The change onward from ours to that of beings who walk other spheres. Thank you, Walt Whitman. Jeff Daniel Marion, Playing to the River. She stands by the riverbank, notes from her bagpipes lapping across to us as we wait for the traffic light to change. She does not know we hear. She is playing to the river, a song for the water, the flow of an unknown melody to the rocky bluffs beyond, for the mist that was this morning, shroud of past lives, fishermen and riverboat gamblers, tugboat captains and log raftsmen, pioneer and native slipping through the eddies of time. She plays for them all, both dirge and surging hymn, for what has passed and is passing as we slip into the currents of traffic, the changed light bearing us away. Thank you, Jeff Daniel Marion, Playing to the River, from his collection, Father. The Zen Buddhist monk, Pema Chodron, this is from When Things Fall Apart, Hard Advice for Difficult Times. Letting there be room for not knowing is the most important thing of all. When there's a big disappointment, we don't know if that's the end of the story. It may just be the beginning of a great adventure. Life is like that. We don't know anything. We call something bad, we call it good, but really, we just don't know. Meanwhile, by Jack Gilbert. It waits. While I am walking through the pine trees along the river, it is waiting. It has waited a long time. In southern France, in Belgium, and even Alabama. Now it waits in New England while I say grace over almost everything. For a possum dead on someone's lawn, the sing light on a levee while Northampton sleeps, and because the lanes between houses in Greek hamlets are exactly the width of a donkey loaded on each side with barley. Loneliness is the mother's milk of America. The heart is a foreign country whose language none of us is good at. Winter lingers on in the woods, but already it looks discarded as the birds return and sing carelessly, as though there never was the power or size of December. For 9 years and me it has waited. My life is pleasant as usual. My body is a blessing and my spirit clear, but the waiting does not let up. Thank you, Jack Gilbert. That made me want to pair a poem I hadn't seen in a very long time. A poem of mine from January of 2019. As I look back upon a fraught and fearsome life passage and what I was able and graced to get to. This is called The Poet All at Sea, after the Ancient Mariner. How a poet, having passed the known line, was driven by storms to a foreign pole of dark shores, and how from that lost place he made his course true north to a latitude of great light, and of the curious things that came to pass on his depthful voyage, and in what manner the poet came to his truest sense and place of belonging. Rainer Maria Rilke, from his Letters to a Young Poet. Were it possible for us to see further than our knowledge reaches, and yet a little way beyond the outer works of our divinings, perhaps we would endure our sadnesses with greater confidence than our joys, for they are the moments when something new has entered into us, something unknown. Our feelings grow mute in shy perplexity. Everything in us withdraws. A stillness comes, and the new, which no one knows, stands in the midst of it and is silent. Thank you, Rilke. That led me to this poem of mine that begins with a quote by Rilke and uses nature as a touchstone and an illuminator. Rilke. Forget, forget, and let us live now, only this. Let us cross over and invest this world where everything is lunar. The moon. I'm inside its crescent, full of its pure lunar energies that enter the secret places of my dreams, my dream-deep desires, that silver through my shadows, chiaroscuros. It lights a welcome, often waxing way through the night silences of the woods, the somnolence of the surrounding world. A lifted lantern I use to rove through many queries, imaginings, mysteries. The moon. Also from The Marginalian. What happens when we die? A novel about the creation. This is Alan Lightman once more. The book is actually called Mr. G. Interesting, that's my first letter of my last name. How can a creature who will certainly die have an understanding of things that will exist forever? So Maria Popova writes in here, when my atheist engineer grandfather died, my atheist engineer grandmother leaned over the body in the hospice bed that had contained half a century of shared life and love, cradled the cranium in which a stubborn and sensitive mind had dwelt, and whispered into the halogen-lit ether, "Where did you go, my darling?" She says, I wish I could have given my grandmother and given the dying Walt Whitman, the infinitely invigorating Mr. G, a novel about the creation by the poetic physicist Alan Lightman, a magical realist serenade to science, coursing with symphonic truth about our search for meaning, our hunger for beauty, and what makes our tender, transient lives worth living. Toward the end of the novel, Mr. G watches, with heartache unknown in the void, predating the existence of universes and of life, an old woman on her deathbed, the film of her long and painful and beautiful life, unspooling from the reel of memory, leaving her grief-stricken by its terminus, shuddering with defiant disbelief that this is all. And from the book, how can a creature of substance and mass fathom a thing without substance or mass? Wonders Mr. G as he sorrows, watching her succumb to the very laws he created. How can a creature who will certainly die have an understanding of things that will exist forever? In the cremation, her water evaporated. Her carbon and nitrogen combined with oxygen to make gaseous carbon dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, which floated skyward and mingled with the air. Most of her calcium and phosphorus baked into a reddish-brown residue and scattered in soil and in wind. Mr. G, a novel about creation. Lute music by Kenneth Rexroth. The earth will be going on a long time before it finally freezes. Men will be on it. They will take names, give their deeds reasons. We will be here only as chemical constituents. A small franchise, indeed. Right now we have lives, corpuscles, ambitions, caresses, like everybody had once. Here at the year's end, at the feast of birth, let us bring to each other the gifts brought once west through deserts, the precious metal of our mingled hair, the frankincense of enraptured arms and legs, the myrrh of desperate, invincible kisses. Let us celebrate the daily, recurrent nativity of love, the endless epiphany of our fluent selves, while the earth rolls away under us into unknown snows and summers, into untraveled spaces of the stars. Lute music by Kenneth Rexroth. Thank you. As we come to our last sharings now, my friends, one more from Walt Whitman and a few last things. Our dear, rare Walt Whitman, still very alive in so many molecules, certainly mine. When I heard the learned astronomer, when the proofs, the figures were ranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts and diagrams to add, divide, and measure them, when I, sitting, heard the astronomer where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room, how soon unaccountable I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out, I wandered off by myself in the mystical moist night air, and from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars. Well, here. I think we more stargazing and less lecture listening. What do you think? A quote from Bernhard Günther. Slow down, sink into your gut, be present to what is, and the universe, nature, and the divine will open to you in ways you cannot possibly grasp intellectually and in ways you could never have predicted. Be first, then do, in alignment. Embrace the mystery of the unknown and enjoy the ride. It's what you signed up for. Yes, indeed, I agree. And in these times of dark clouds over parts of our world, over parts of many people's minds, hearts, lives, communities, I feel it's incredibly vital for each of us to become bearers of light. Being of light. Be a man, a woman, a child of light. A bearer of light. A kindler and keeper of light that beacons in all directions, sweeps over dark seas, stony shores, the faces of vessels, of sailors, of known and unknown voyagers. Blessing the Boats by Lucille Clifton. May the tide that is entering even now the lip of our understanding carry you out beyond the face of fear. May you kiss the wind, then turn from it, certain that it will love your back. May you open your eyes to water, water waving forever, and may you, in your innocence, sail through this to that. And last, for now, and thank you, Lucille Clifton. And last for now, I have a piece apropos of our theme, but also in honor of the approaching winter solstice, so soon upon us, upon the earth. It's a poem for the winter solstice, As Above and Below, from 2019. As the sun and gyring heavens, the ancient constellations above, balance with the turning earth, this terra firma we call home below. Maybe in their solstice pausing and stilling, we can find our own place and peace of balance between them and within. Feel the deeper harmony of our being, our equally remarkable and faithful natures. Welcome this season of our life, the rhyme of our living, and a sense of our next unfoldings, whatever they may be, however clear or mysterious. As we follow through all familiar and unknown bareness, darkness, the light of our own bright gathered inner stars. Spread the warmth of the truest, tenderest parts of our hearts. Lean in to the comforting grounding of our earthly bodies. As we wayfare out, singly and together, toward more sun-long days, gentle springs, and footloose, time-soft summers. Thank you again for leaning in, listening, and feeling in, and wondering in through this time. For freely sharing these broadcasts with your friends and others. And for those of you so thoughtful, sending gifts of appreciation to me for a given program or for all the work I do to create and present these free weekly shows to help nourish and uplift hearts, minds, and spirits across the world. So hungry and thirsty for it, I can tell you from all I hear back, and it's true. So I'm glad to do my part. If, by the way, you have a suggestion for a future theme, I would love to have that. I'm always thinking what else ought I to be covering for you. So I'd welcome yours. My email is colin@thepoetorialist.com. I'd also love to know what your experience was of this show on the unknown. How did it intrigue, affect, or resonate with you? For those sending a contribution of any amount, every dollar counts. You can do so by Venmo to fivefold, FIVEFOLD, at pipeline.com, or PayPal to me at the same address, or by regular mail, P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island, 02891, or through my site, thepoetorialist.com, in the Donate tab. Yes, patrons can host or sponsor me at times as a working poet in residence in an agreed place in the world for an agreed time, at a given season, to create a new flight of poetic art dedicated to them. Email me to explore that. Meanwhile, you can hear all the broadcasts online, as some of you know, on YouTube, on the Floating Poetry playlist. I hope you'll lean in soon again. Until then, dear listeners, may you meet all your unknowns, life's unknowns, nature's unknowns, with curiosity, with trust in your well-being, with a deep sense of adventure and discovery, with wordless wonder. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.